The beast in the hangar, the storm outside, was screaming like a living thing. Through the thick glass of the medical bay, lightning flashed over the endless plains of Corthus 9, a world of iron dust and violet skies, where even the air bit at metal like acid. Inside, the hangar lights flickered as technicians hurried to lock down power systems. The creature on the floor didn't move, 4 meters long, muscles like woven cables beneath cracked, gray hide. 2 rows of spines lined its back, each one broken, leading from where the energy restraints had dug in. Its breathing came in ragged, wet gasps, and every exhale made the room smell faintly of ozone and scorched blood. The Corthan medics stood in a semicircle around it, tall, insectoid beings with blue-green carapaces and black, unreadable eyes. None dared step closer. Their leader, a silver-banded medic named Tarven, clicked nervously as he adjusted his respirator. "It's still conscious," one of the younger medics whispered. "We should sedate it again." Tarven shook his head. "No dose holds. Every tranquilizer burns out of its blood within minutes. Its biology is chaos, like it was built to resist control." He turned toward the far end of the hangar, where the heavy blast doors hissed open. A human walked in. He wasn't tall, at least not compared to the insectoid medics, but there was something steady about the way he moved. His uniform was old Earth standard, its edges patched and stained with grease. A nameplate on his chest read Rains. His eyes were tired. Not weak, but old in a way only soldiers looked after too many wars. Tarven took a hesitant step forward. "Human, you were called because your species has a reputation for handling chaos," Rains said quietly. He set down his duffel bag and knelt beside the creature. "That's what you meant, right?" The Corthan medic hesitated. "Yes, none of our doctors can touch it. The creature was captured during the breach on Sector 9. It's been tearing itself apart ever since." Rains didn't answer right away. He just looked. Really looked. Under the grime and blood, the creature's body trembled with pain. Its eyes, 4 of them, deep amber like molten glass, tracked every movement, every breath in the room. Not hatred, not fear, just confusion. Rains reached slowly toward his bag. "You said it's called a beast, but what's its name?" Tarven made a sharp clicking sound that meant discomfort. "It has none. Its kind don't use names. They were engineered for war by the Drovath Dominion. Bio-soldiers, grown in tanks. It's not supposed to think." Rains's lips thinned. "Everything that screams and bleeds can think. You just have to listen." The other medics exchanged worried glances. No one approached. They'd seen what the creature did when anyone got too close. The shattered armor, the twisted restraining arms, the medic it nearly tore in half 2 hours ago. But Rains kept moving, quiet as gravity. He knelt beside the beast's head. Its eyes rolled toward him. A low growl rippled through the hangar, deep enough to shake the floor. The other medics drew back instinctively, their leg joints snapping in fear. Rains didn't move. He just spoke, softly, like he was talking to a wounded dog. "Hey. Hey there, big guy. You're okay." The creature's breathing hitched. It blinked, confused by the tone. Rains slowly pulled out a small med scanner from his kit. "You've got burns along your neural ridges. Those collars the Drovath used on you. They're cooking your nerves. No wonder you're in pain." He glanced up at Tarven. "Get me a null field generator, manual override type." "And saline." The Corthan leader stiffened. "You cannot mean to." "I'm not asking," Rains said. "If we don't stabilize this thing, it'll flatline in minutes. Or worse, panic again." Tarven hesitated, but the tone in Rains's voice brooked no argument. The medics scrambled to bring the gear. Rains turned back to the beast, lowering his voice. You've been through hell, haven't you? You didn't ask to fight. They made you. The creature made a small sound, a strange, almost human whine, half buried beneath the growl. Lightning flared outside again, illuminating Rains's face, a scar running from his temple down to his neck, a soldier's souvenir from another war. He brushed his fingers over the cracked restraint collar. The beast flinched, but didn't attack. That's it, Rains whispered. Easy, buddy. I've got you. The Corthans froze. The creature's breathing slowed, steadying. Rains worked fast, adjusting the null field generator and splicing it into the collar's power conduit. The system hummed, then flickered off. Sparks scattered across the floor. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the beast exhaled a long, shuddering breath. The blue light in its eyes dimmed to a natural amber. Its muscles stopped spasming. Rains sat back on his heels, wiping sweat from his brow. See, that wasn't so bad. Tarvin clicked his mandibles nervously. You calmed it. I didn't calm it, Rains said quietly. I treated it like a person. But even as he said it, something in the hangar changed. The creature's gaze shifted past him, to the observation deck above. Through the glass, a group of figures in black armor were watching. Dominion armor. Droveth enforcers. One of them spoke into a comm. The loudspeakers crackled to life. Human technician Rains. Step away from the specimen. It is property of the Dominion. Rains didn't move. He looked up at them, eyes hard. Property doesn't bleed like this. A voice came again, colder. Final warning. Step away, or you will be fired upon. Tarvin turned sharply toward the human. Rains, please. Don't make this worse. But Rains was already standing. He reached for the control console beside him and hit the emergency lockdown. Steel shutters slammed over the observation deck windows. Red alarms flashed. The medics shouted in panic as the Dominion soldiers outside began hammering on the sealed doors. Rains knelt beside the beast again and whispered, You want out of here, don't you? I can help, but you've got to trust me. The creature's eyes focused on him. Really focused. It gave a small, uncertain nod. Rains smiled grimly. Then we're in this together. The door behind them exploded inward. Shards of metal flew through the air. Dominion soldiers stormed in, weapons blazing, and the beast roared. It wasn't a sound meant for mortal ears. It was thunder, grief, and fury made flesh. The hangar walls shook. The soldiers froze, just long enough for Rains to dive behind a console, dragging his medkit with him. All right, he muttered, snapping open a pulse pistol. Guess we're doing this the hard way. Asterisk the breakout, the hangar filled with smoke and chaos. Dominion soldiers poured through the breach, their black armor glinting in the red emergency lights. Energy bolts screamed through the air, burning holes in the deck. Rains ducked behind a console as one blast scorched the wall above him. His heart hammered in his chest, not from fear, but focus. He'd been in firefights before. He knew what panic did. Think, Rains, he muttered. Think like an engineer, not a soldier. He scanned the room. The Corthan medics had fled to the far corner, shielding themselves behind overturned equipment. The beast stood between them and the soldiers, massive, wounded, but alive. Its chest rose and fell in deep, furious breaths. The Dominion commander barked an order. Contain it. Use the neurospikes. 3 soldiers raised their weapons, long rods tipped with glowing prongs. They fired. Blue arcs of energy shot toward the beast and hit the floor as the creature moved fast, too fast for something that sized in a blur. The beast leapt over the medics, its claws tearing through a Dominion trooper like paper. Sparks and blood sprayed the deck. The others fell back, shouting. Targets loose. Targets. A single swipe silenced him. Rains popped out of cover, firing short, controlled bursts from his pistol, aiming for weak points. One shot hit a soldier's power pack. It exploded, taking 2 others down with it. But there were too many. Rains. Tarvin's voice crackled over the comlink. The service tunnels beneath the hangar. They lead to the old shuttle bays. Rains ducked as another bolt sizzled past his head. Coordinates. Tarvin sent them instantly. Rains brought up his wrist console, overlaying the map in his visor. There, under the east bulkhead, he looked up at the beast dot. It was bleeding badly now, shoulder torn open by one of the neurospike grazes. But it still stood, glaring down the soldiers. Rains shouted over the noise. "Hey, big guy, you want to live?" The beast's 4 eyes locked on him. Rains pointed toward the far wall. "Over there. Tunnel access." We moved together. The beast hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then gave a short, sharp grunt. Agreement. Rains sprinted first, diving between bursts of plasma. The beast followed, its huge frame smashing through fallen debris. A soldier tried to block their path. The beast caught him mid-charge. Tossed him into a wall hard enough to dent steel dot. They reached the bulkhead. Rains dropped to one knee, pulling a plasma cutter from his belt. "Cover me." The beast planted itself in front of him, roaring at the advancing troops. Energy blasts hit its hide, burning, but it didn't flinch. Rains sliced through the access panel, sparks flying. Almost there. One of the Dominion soldiers lobbed a stun grenade. Rains saw it too late. He grabbed his bag and dove, yelling, "Down!" The explosion hit like thunder. Rains felt himself lifted off the floor, then nothing but ringing silence. He hit the ground hard, vision swimming. The beast lay a few meters away, twitching. Its spines glowed faintly, discharging static. The soldiers were closing in. Rains struggled up, every joint screaming. He saw the open tunnel hatch he'd been cutting, almost big enough. Not for the beast, though. He cursed under his breath. No, come on. He staggered over, plasma cutter still in hand. Sparks filled the air again. Just a little more. A Dominion trooper kicked him in the back, sending him sprawling. His pistol skittered away. The trooper raised his weapon and froze. The beast's massive tail whipped around and crushed the soldier against the bulkhead. Rains gasped, dragging himself to his knees. The opening was wide enough now. Barely. He reached for his comb. "Tarvin, tunnel's open. Get out now." The Corthan medic's voice came through, panicked but alive. "We are retreating. What about you?" Rains glanced back at the beast. It was shaking, breath ragged, muscles trembling with exhaustion. "I'm not leaving him," Rains said. "He's coming with me." He grabbed the plasma cutter, jammed it under the last bit of fused metal, and forced it open. The gap widened just enough. He looked at the beast and shouted, "Go! Move!" The creature stared at him for a long second. Then, with surprising gentleness, lowered its head and crawled into the tunnel. The steel scraped its spines, drawing blood. But it kept going. Rains followed, sealing the hatch behind them. Darkness swallowed them. The only light came from Rains's wrist console and the faint, bioluminescent glow pulsing under the beast's skin. They crawled for what felt like forever, through narrow pipes and dripping conduits. The tunnel sloped downward, away from the hangar, deeper into the old mining levels of the base. Rains finally stopped, panting, and sat back against a pipe. The beast slumped beside him, breathing heavily. "You did good," Rains said softly. "You saved my ass back there." The beast's eyes flicked toward him. It made a low, guttural sound, not quite a growl, not quite words, Rains tilted his head. You understand me, don't you? Silence. Then a slow, almost hesitant nod. Rains blinked. Huh. Guess I owe the rumors an apology. He reached into his bag, pulled out a small injector, and held it up. Pain suppressant. Works on most carbon-based life. He hesitated. You trust me? The beast watched him and leaned forward. Rains smiled faintly. Braver than half the soldiers I knew. He injected the serum near one of the burns. The creature hissed softly but didn't pull away. Within minutes, the tremors eased. Rains leaned back against the tunnel wall. We need to keep moving. Dominion won't stop. They'll want you back in their labs. He paused, then added quietly, You got a name I can use? Something simple? The beast looked down, as if thinking. Then, using one massive claw, it scratched something into the metal floor. A pattern, almost like letters. Rains squinted. Karak? The beast blinked slowly, then nodded. All right, Karak, Rains said. I'm Mason. We're partners now. For a few moments, neither spoke. Only the faint hum of distant machinery filled the air. Then the tunnel lights flickered. Once, twice. Rains frowned. That's not good. A deep rumble echoed from behind them. Metal screeched. The Dominion had found the hatch. Karak tensed, growling low. Rains grabbed his gear. Time to move. They crawled faster, deeper into the dark. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, ancient mining shafts, abandoned decades ago. Rusted rails led off into the gloom. Rains scanned his map. We're close to the lower bays. If we can reach the maintenance lift, we might find a shuttle. Karak's gaze followed him closely now. Alert, intelligent. But before they could move, a harsh voice echoed through the chamber speakers, distorted but unmistakable. Human Rains. You cannot run. The Dominion does not forget theft. The voice chuckled, cold and mechanical. The creature is ours. You think you can tame it? You'll die trying. Rains gritted his teeth. Yeah, we'll see about that. He motioned to Karak. Come on, buddy. Let's prove them wrong. They stepped into the tunnel beyond, unaware that the walls themselves were alive with hidden scanners, tracking every breath they took. Asterisk the machine graves. Tunnels opened into something vast, a buried city of steel bones. Rains stood at the edge of a rusted walkway, gazing down into a dark cavern that stretched farther than his light could reach. Towers of broken machinery jutted from the floor like tombstones. Faded Dominion symbols were etched into the walls, relics from a time when Corthus 9 had been a factory world. Welcome to the machine graves, he muttered. Nobody comes down here anymore. Karak followed close behind, his claws clicking softly on metal. Despite his size, his movements were surprisingly controlled now, careful not to shake the walkway too much. The pain suppressant still worked, but his wounds were ugly, glowing faintly where the collar had burned through flesh. Rains stopped by a control terminal, brushing dust from the surface. Let's see if we can find a path out. He connected his wrist console, sparks flickering as power surged through dead circuits. Lines of alien text scrolled across the cracked screen. Subsystems offline. Emergency power grid. Yeah. Rains muttered. Come on, give me something useful. A faint map blinked to life. One blinking blue marker, their location, far below the surface levels. He traced a route with his finger. Maintenance lifts here. Reactor conduit here. Shuttle bay. He stopped. Sealed off. Karak tilted his head, rumbling a question. Yeah, Rains said. We can get out, but we'll need power to open the bay. That means going through the old reactor core. He glanced up at the towering pipes and shadows, and praying it doesn't melt us. The beast's low growl almost sounded like a laugh. Glad you think it's funny, Rains muttered. They moved carefully through the ruins. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Corridors half-fused by ancient heat. Rooms filled with shattered droids and strange humming from somewhere below. Like the heartbeat of the planet itself. At one point, Rains paused near a broken console. A symbol was burned into the wall, the same as Karak's collar. He frowned. Droveth Dominion. War Beast Division. He ran his fingers along the mark, thinking. They built you down here, didn't they? Karak's eyes flickered. He gave a soft sound, half growl. Half memory. Images flickered in his mind. Tanks of liquid light, the cold hands of scientists. Commands shouted through neural implants. Pain, hunger, rage. Rains saw the way. Karak's spines quivered and stepped closer. Hey, you're not them anymore. You're free, remember? The creature blinked hard and nodded slowly. Good, Rains said. Because we're not dying in your old prison. They continued until the floor beneath them opened into a massive pit, a broken reactor shaft. Steam hissed from vents, glowing faintly blue. Rains whistled low. Still running after 50 years. Impressive. He pointed to a narrow walkway spiraling downward. That's our way to the core control. You good for the climb? Karak tested the metal with one claw. It groaned under his weight, but held. All right, Rains said. Let's go before the Dominion finds another way in. They descended, one careful step at a time. Halfway down, the air filled with static. Rains's wrist console glitched. Then, a faint metallic whisper, echoing through the shaft. Subject 47 detected. Asterisk. Rains froze. What was that? The voice came again, from everywhere and nowhere. Subject 47. Containment breach. Initiating retrieval protocols. Karak's hackles rose. His eyes burned brighter. Rains cursed under his breath. Of course they left automated defenses. From the darkness below, something stirred. Dozens of red lights flickered to life. Drones, rising from the reactor pit like a swarm of mechanical hornets. Damn it, Rains growled. Run! They sprinted down the walkway, the swarm chasing them, energy bolts slashing through the steam. Metal hissed and warped under the heat. Karak leapt across a broken section, landing hard. The walkway trembled, then collapsed behind him. Rains barely made the jump, grabbing onto a loose pipe. Don't you dare leave me hanging. He shouted. Karak reached back with one clawed hand and pulled him up effortlessly. Thanks, Rains panted. Now let's... He didn't finish. A drone swooped in, firing a plasma beam that grazed his arm. Pain exploded through him. He dropped his pistol. Karak roared, turning on the swarm with primal fury. He caught one drone mid-dive, crushed it like tin, then hurled the wreck into another. Sparks rained down, lighting the shaft with brief flashes. Rains grabbed his fallen pistol with his good hand and fired into the cloud, covering their path. Keep moving. He shouted. They reached the reactor platform, a circular control hub surrounded by molten coolant streams. The hum of power was deafening. Rains rushed to the console, slamming his console into the interface port. Come on, come on. The screen flickered. Manual override. Password required. He muttered, Great. Alien security. My favorite. Behind him, Karak tore through another drone, taking a hit across his flank. Blood splattered the floor, glowing faintly in the light. Rains glanced back. Hang on, buddy. He started typing commands, guessing at syntax, using Dominion patterns he'd learned years ago as a combat engineer. Security Protocol Gamma 7. Reactor Control Access. Gotcha. The platform shuddered as power surged back through the conduits. Blue light flooded the chamber. Reactor online, the automated voice said. Warning, unstable containment. Yeah, I know. Rains hit the override. Just need enough juice to open that damn shuttle bay. But as the platform rose, a massive shape burst from the reactor pit, a Dominion war droid. Old but still functional, its eyes glowing crimson. The thing was half machine, half organic, a relic from the same program that had made Karak. Subject 47. It intoned, voice like grinding steel. You will return to containment. Karak froze. The droid's voice carried authority, a command wired deep into his neural scars. Rains saw him tremble, muscles locking. Hey, he shouted. Don't listen to it. You're not their property anymore. The droid raised its arm, charging a plasma cannon. Rains dove aside as the beam tore through the lift machinery. The platform tilted dangerously. Karak! He yelled. Snap out of it. The beast's breathing was fast, erratic. His claws dug into the deck. The droid advanced. Return, Subject 47. Obedience ensures survival. Rains stepped in front of Karak, gun shaking in his hand. You want him? You'll have to go through me. The droid paused. Human interference irrelevant. It raised its weapon again, but this time, something changed in Karak's eyes. The command words didn't sound like law anymore. They sounded like chains. And Karak was done being chained. He moved like lightning, smashing into the droid with all his strength. The impact shook the platform. Metal screamed. The war droid's claws tore at Karak's side, but the beast didn't stop. He ripped into the machine's chest, sparks and oil spraying everywhere. Finally, with a roar that echoed through the reactor shaft, Karak tore the droid's head clean off. The body collapsed. Hissing, Rains stared breathless. You broke your programming, he said softly. Karak looked at him, and for the first time, there was something almost human in his expression. Freedom. The lift groaned, beginning to rise again. Let's get out before this place blows, Rains said. Grinning, Karak gave a low rumble of agreement. They ascended through the flickering light, the reactor roaring below, unaware that on the surface, the Dominion had already sealed every exit and deployed their deadliest hunter. Asterisk. The hunter above the elevator doors groaned open to a world of ash and wind. Corthus 9's surface was a graveyard. The storm had calmed, but the sky still burned a dull violet. Broken towers of metal reached toward the clouds like the fingers of dead gods. Lightning flickered between them, faint and distant. Rains stepped out first, pistol drawn, scanning the ruins. His visor pinned with interference. Radios jammed. Figures. Behind him, Karak emerged, ducking through the half-collapsed doorway. His hide glistened with sweat and dried blood, but his eyes burned with alert purpose. He paused, sniffing the air. Yeah, I feel it too, Rains said quietly. Something's out there. They started moving through the wreckage. Twisted vehicles, shredded banners, bones long since turned to dust. The Dominion had abandoned this sector years ago, after the mining war, but Rains had a feeling they'd never stopped watching it. The wind whistled through cracked glass. Every sound seemed too loud, too close. Suddenly, Karak stopped dead. His spines rose, vibrating with a faint hum. What is it? Rains whispered. The beast's gaze turned toward the horizon, toward a shimmer in the air that didn't belong. Rains lifted his visor and squinted. At first he saw nothing. Then the shimmer moved. A shape detached from the haze, tall, thin, gleaming silver. A Dominion hunter. Rains' stomach tightened. Damn, they sent an Omega class. He'd heard of them. Assassin constructs made to track rogue assets across planets. Faster than ships. Smarter than most officers. The hunter stood in the open, its face smooth and eyeless, its voice a mechanical whisper carried on the wind. Subject 47. Return, and your termination will be swift. Karak growled low, his entire body tensing. Rains looked at him. We can't fight that head-on. Not in the open. Karak's claws dug into the ground, ready. Yeah, I know you want to, Rains said. But we need cover. Over there, he pointed to the ruins of a crashed shuttle half buried in the dust. Move! They ran. The hunter didn't follow, not at first. It simply tilted its head, scanning, calculating. Then it vanished. A blur. Rains barely had time to shout before the air behind him cracked like thunder. The hunter appeared mid-stride, striking the ground hard enough to throw Rains forward. Karak roared, spinning to intercept. His claws met the hunter's blade arm with a sound like tearing metal. Sparks exploded between them. The force of the impact sent both sliding backward. Rains scrambled to his feet. Karak! The beast's eyes glowed fiercely. He charged again, striking with raw fury. But the hunter was faster. It sidestepped, slashing deep across Karak's flank. Rains fired his pistol, shots sparking harmlessly off the thing's armor. The hunter turned, its blank face reflecting Rains's own determined glare. It moved toward him, silent, deliberate. Rains backed away slowly, then smirked. You're made of circuits, right? Let's see how you like a power surge. Asterisk, he flicked open his wrist console and sent a command to his plasma cutter, still magnetized to his belt. The device's internal cell overloaded instantly. Bursting into a blinding flash of light, the hunter staggered. Momentarily blinded, Karak seized the moment, slamming into it full force and hurling it across the ruins. The construct smashed into a steel column, half buried in rubble. Nice one. Rains shouted, running toward cover. They ducked behind the crashed shuttle as dust filled the air. Rains ripped open an access panel, searching the controls. Old power cell? Maybe still alive? Karak crouched beside him, breathing hard. His wounds bled, dark and thick. Hey, stay with me, Rains said, forcing the old panel open. You drop dead on me. I'll be pissed. The beast's response was a tired snort that almost sounded amused. Rains found what he needed. A half-drained fusion core. He grinned. Perfect. Portable bomb. He connected a few wires, jury-rigging a proximity charge. This'll give that shiny bastard a bad day if we can bait him close. He looked up. You ready for one more round? Karak bared his teeth and nodded adoptable quotes good. Follow my lead. The ground shook as the hunter climbed from the wreckage, undamaged except for faint scorch marks. It raised its weapon arm, a gleaming energy blade that hissed in the wind. Resistance? Inefficient, Rains shouted. You hear that? He just called you inefficient. Karak roared in fury, charging forward. The hunter met him halfway. The two collided with a sound like thunder. Rains sprinted around the flank, keeping low, clutching the fusion core. Every move had to count. Karak grappled the hunter, claws scraping against armor, trying to pin it long enough. But the machine twisted free and struck back, slashing deep into Karak's shoulder. The beast howled, falling to one knee. Rains didn't hesitate. He ran straight for them. Hey, tin can! He shouted. Catch! He hurled the fusion core dot. The hunter turned just in time to see it land at its feet. Blinking red, Rains dove behind debris. Now, the explosion ripped through the ruins, a blinding flash of blue-white fire. The shockwave flattened the ground, throwing dust and debris for hundreds of meters. For a long moment, there was silence, only the crackle of cooling metal. Then Rains rose, coughing through smoke. Karak? Asterisk, a low rumble answered from the haze. The beast limped into view, his armor plating scorched but intact. "You stubborn bastard," Rains breathed. "You made it." But before he could relax, a shape moved within the smoke. The hunter stepped forward. Half its armor melted away, one arm missing, but still functional. Its voice was distorted, broken but furious. Termination. Required. Rains's stomach dropped. "Oh, come on." Karak growled, blood dripping from his claws. The hunter lunged, straight for Rains. Time slowed. Rains raised his pistol. But it was too late. The beast slammed into the hunter mid-leap, tackling it into a collapsing support beam. Both fell into a pit of shattered metal below. Nitrogen monoxide. Rains screamed, racing to the edge. Dust billowed up, choking the air. He could barely see. Karak. No answer. Only the distant sound of grinding metal below. He climbed down, slipping over debris, coughing. The pit was filled with twisted wreckage. Sparks danced in the shadows. Then, movement. Asterisk, the hunter rose first. Missing half its torso, dragging itself forward, Rains lifted his pistol. But it was empty. The construct reached for him, and then stopped. Karak's tail burst through its chest from behind. Impaling it. The beast rose behind it, battered and bleeding, but alive. He yanked his tail free and hurled the hunter's corpse aside. Rains let out a shaky laugh. "I should have known. Takes more than a robot to kill you." Karak grunted softly, then stumbled. Rains ran to him. "Hey, easy. Sit down, big guy, I've got you." He pressed bandages over the wounds. But it was bad. Deep cuts, internal burns. "You saved me again," Rains said quietly. "But you're gonna bleed out if we don't find help." He looked up at the horizon. The storm clouds were parting, and far in the distance, faint lights glimmered. A settlement. Asterisk. Rains exhaled. "Looks like we're not alone out here after all." He slung his gear over his shoulder and patted Karak's hide. "Come on, buddy. Let's go find out who's still alive." They limped into the stormy twilight. Side by side, man and beast, bound by survival. Heading toward the last light of KOR, this -9. But far above. In a Dominion cruiser orbiting the planet, a cold voice spoke to its commander. "Hunter unit destroyed. Subject 47 remains active. Recommend planetary purge." The last outpost the storm had quieted by the time they reached the ridge. Below them, nestled among cracked cliffs and twisted metal, a faint network of lights shimmered in the dark. An outpost. It wasn't Dominion built. The architecture was rough, patched together from scavenged ship hulls and local stone. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, and old plasma towers buzzed weakly. Rains squinted through his visor. "Looks like survivors. Or smugglers." Karak sniffed the air, his spines twitching. "Not Dominion." "That's good enough for me." They made their way down the slope, Rains half carrying the wounded beast. Every step left deep prints in the ash. By the time they reached the outskirts, guards had already taken notice, a few figures in scavenged armor, pointing old rifles their way. "Hold it right there," one shouted. "Identify yourselves." Rains raised his hands. Name's Rains, former Terran infantry. "My friend here's not feeling great. We need medical." The guards exchanged uncertain looks. One whispered, "That's a Dominion war beast." Rains's tone hardened. "Yeah, and he saved my life. Twice. You shoot him, and I'll make sure you regret it." That got their attention. After a tense moment, one guard lowered his weapon. "All right, slowly, inside." They guided. The pair through the gate, an improvised barricade made of starship hulls welded into walls. Inside, dozens of beings, humans, aliens, hybrids, moved through the narrow streets. The air smelled of oil, rust, and desperation. Rains helped Karak into what passed for a medbay. a tent filled with repurposed Dominion equipment. A medic, a wiry woman with cybernetic eyes, rushed forward. "Put him here," she said, scanning the beast. "He's losing blood fast. What the hell hit him?" Rains exhaled. "Omega-class hunter." Her eyes widened. "You survived that?" He gave a faint grin. "We're hard to kill." She got to work, sealing wounds with nanogel and synthetic stitching. Karak grunted but didn't move. His breathing steadied, slow but strong. Rains finally sat down, exhaustion catching up. For the first time in hours, he let himself breathe. That's when a voice came from the doorway. "You brought Dominion attention with you, soldier." Rains looked up. A tall man in worn armor stood there. Human, late 40s, one arm replaced with a crude prosthetic. His insignia was old, but recognizable. The Terran Defense Fleet. "Didn't think anyone from the fleet was still kicking," Rains said. The man gave a humorless chuckle. "Captain Ilya Merrick, commander of what's left of the 12th Outpost. You're standing in it." Rains nodded. "Appreciate the hospitality." Merrick's eyes flicked toward Karak. "That thing's Dominion. You know what they used those for?" "I do," Rains said quietly. "I also know what he's done since. He's free now." "No such thing as a free Dominion weapon," Merrick muttered. "They always come with a leash." "Not this one." The two men locked eyes, neither backing down. Finally, Merrick sighed. "You'd better be right. Because if you're wrong, he's going to bring the Dominion right to our doorstep." Hours later, Karak stirred awake. His voice was rough. "We live?" Rain smiled. "Barely. You're tougher than you look." The beast blinked, confusion flickering across his features. "Why? Did you save me again?" Rains leaned back. "Because you're my partner. And because that's what humans do, we look out for our own." Karak stared at him for a long time, as if weighing the words. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You are strange." "Yeah," Rains said. "That's what they tell me." Outside, the outpost hummed with subdued energy. Generators sputtered. Lights flickered, and whispers moved through the crowd. A human soldier and a Dominion beast walking together. But overhead, far beyond the clouds, the Dominion fleet was already aligning. Massive ships shifted position, forming a ring in orbit around the planet. The next morning, Rains joined Merrick in the control tower, a glass dome patched with rusted panels and flickering holoscreens. The captain pointed at a red blip on the radar. "That's a Dominion cruiser," Merrick said grimly. "It's been sitting there for 6 hours. We've seen this before. When they lose control of an asset, they sterilize the entire planet." "Planetary purge," Rains murmured. "They'll burn the atmosphere." "Exactly. And we can't outrun orbital fire." Rains folded his arms. "What about communication? Any way to reach a Dominion relay?" Merrick frowned. "Why? The hell would you want to do that?" "Because maybe," Rains said, glancing out the window at Karak resting below, "we can give them something they'll listen to." That night, under a sky flickering with faint auroras, Rains sat beside the beast. The wind was cold, carrying the scent of ozone. "They're coming," Rains said quietly. "They'll glass the whole world just to kill you." Karak's gaze was distant. "They fear what they made. Maybe they should." He smiled faintly. "But we're not dying here." He pulled a small transmitter from his pack, old Dominion tech, jury-rigged with Terran wiring. "If I can get this tuned to their command frequency, I can send a signal." Karak tilted his head. "A trap? A message?" The beast's spines rattled softly. "They will not listen." "They will," Rains said, determination in his eyes. "Because this time, they'll be listening to us." He looked up at the night sky, the stars glinting like cold fire. "Tomorrow, we make them remember why humanity doesn't kneel." Asterisk when the galaxy listened, the wind howled across the cliffs of Corthus 9, scattering ash like snowfall dot in the outpost below. Lights flickered as the storm approached again, not of weather, but of war. The Dominion fleet hung above the planet like a constellation of knives, their orbital cannons gathering power. Inside the command tent, every eye was on the human and the beast. Rain sat cross-legged on the floor, his hands deep inside the open guts of the transmitter. Wires spilled out like veins, glowing faintly blue. Across from him, Karak knelt, holding a power cell the size of a boulder steady, while Rains spliced its energy flow. "Hold it there," Rains muttered. "If this thing overcharges, it's going to fry both of us." Karak's voice rumbled low. "You trust too easily, human." Rains grinned faintly. "And you doubt too much." The beast tilted his head. "Humans are strange. That's what keeps us alive." The air filled with the hum of energy as the transmitter powered up, a sound like a storm brewing inside a bottle. Sparks arced, lighting Rains's face with flashes of blue and white. Merrick paced behind them, anxious. "You're sure this thing won't just ping our location and get us atomized?" "It'll ping us, all right," Rains said. "That's the point." "You're insane," Merrick muttered. "Maybe," Rains said, tightening the last bolt. "But I'm our kind of insane." The hollow screen flickered to life, showing a static-filled Dominion broadcast channel. Rains adjusted the frequency until a familiar sigil appeared, the Dominion's crest, the mark of absolute control. Karak tensed. "They will not answer you. They don't need to. They just need to hear me." Rains pressed the activation key. "Attention, Dominion Command," he began, his voice steady, calm. "This is human operative Marcus Rains, formerly of the Terran Infantry. I am on Quarthus 9. I have your beast." Static hissed for a moment. Then a cold, mechanical voice answered. "Human designation M. Rains. You are in possession of restricted biological property. Stand by for orbital termination." Rains smirked. "You always go straight to the threats. Never could hold a decent conversation, could you?" The voice continued, unbothered. "You are delaying the inevitable." Rains leaned closer to the mic. "You see, that's the thing about inevitability. Humans don't believe in it. We make our own endings." Asterisk, he gestured to Karak, who stepped into view of the transmitter's hollow feed. The Dominion officers on the other end visibly froze as they saw him, alive, aware, and calm. "This creature," Rains said, his voice rising, "isn't yours anymore. You made him a weapon. You broke him. But you forgot something. Anything that breathes can choose. He chose peace. He chose to stop fighting your wars." The beast met the camera's gaze and spoke, voice gravel-deep but clear. "I am not your beast." A stunned silence followed. For the first time, the Dominion officers had no reply. Rains pressed on, his tone fierce. "You call yourselves gods, creators, masters. But you built something you couldn't control, not because it was stronger, but because it learned compassion. Because it met a human and realized there's another way." He leaned forward, eyes blazing. "You're afraid of what that means. Afraid that others might follow." The voice on the line faltered. "You speak treason, human." "Maybe," Rains said softly. "But treason's just truth with better timing." He cut the channel. Asterisk, the outpost fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the cooling transmitter. Then Merrick spoke, voice low. "You just painted a target on all of us." "Yeah," Rains said, standing. "But we also gave them something they can't ignore." Karak turned toward him. "They will come." Rains nodded. "Let them." The whole galaxy just saw what they fear most, a Dominion weapon thinking for itself. He looked out at the sky where the stars pulsed brighter now, ships shifting, confusion spreading. On other worlds, Dominion slaves might have seen the transmission. On hidden channels, whispers would already be spreading. A spark of rebellion had been lit. Asterisk, hours later, Alarms blared across the outpost. Dominion ships are moving. Merrick shouted, "They're charging main cannons." Outside, the horizon glowed as orbital fire streaked down like burning comets. The ground shook, and dust rained from the ceilings. Asterisk. Rains grabbed his rifle and met Karak's eyes. Time to move. They burst out of the medbay as plasma struck the far cliffs, vaporizing stone. The outpost descended into chaos, beings running, shouting, scrambling for cover. Merrick and his crew worked frantically to power the shields, but they were old, flickering, fragile. Rains sprinted toward the outer wall, Karak thundering beside him. "We need to draw their aim away from the civilians." Rains shouted. Karak bared his teeth. "Then we give them something to shoot at." The beast leapt onto a ridge, his roar shaking the valley. The Dominion ships adjusted their targeting arrays, locking on to the massive heat signature. "Hey!" Rains yelled, running up beside him. "You're not dying here alone." Karak looked down at him. "I do not understand you." Rains grinned through the smoke. "Good. Means you're starting to think like a human." The next blast hit, closer this time, throwing them both off their feet. Rains coughed, eyes stinging. The ridge was breaking apart beneath them. Merrick's voice crackled through the combs. "Rains!" "We're picking up a massive energy surge from the Dominion flagship. They're about to fire the main cannon." Rains stared at the glowing sky. There was no time left. He turned to Karak. "You trust me?" The beast hesitated, then nodded once. Rains pulled a small device from his belt, its lights blinking red. "Then let's make this count." He slammed the device onto the ground, a beacon, tuned to the Dominion flagship's own targeting systems. If they fired now, they'd hit themselves. The sky tore open. A beam of blue-white energy lanced down, connecting heaven and earth. The blast struck the beacon and ricocheted. The reflection tore through the cloud layer, arcing back toward the flagship. For one brief moment, the stars above Corthus 9 burned brighter than daylight. Then the Dominion flagship exploded. A shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, and silence followed. Rains fell to one knee, exhausted. Karak loomed beside him, his scales scorched, breathing hard. "You planned that?" The beast rasped. Rains smiled weakly. "Half of it. The rest was luck." The beast let out a rumbling laugh. "Human luck." They both turned as the surviving outpost dwellers emerged from the smoke, eyes wide, staring at the sky where the Dominion fleet was scattering, leaderless. Confused, Merrick's voice came over the radio, awed. "You just killed a flagship with its own gun." Rains looked up at the fading glow. "No," he said quietly. "We did." Karak stood beside him, battered but unbroken, staring into the night. Asterisk. The whisper that echoed across the stars. Smoke over Corthus 9 rose for 3 days. Ash fell like gray snow, blanketing the ruins of the outpost and the shattered ridges where the flagship's blast had struck. The storms were quiet now, broken by the silence that follows impossible survival. Rains stood on the edge of the crater, his jacket torn, one arm bandaged. The air shimmered with heat and radiation ghosts, but he didn't move. He just stared at the sky where the Dominion fleet had been, now empty except for drifting wreckage and burning debris trails behind him. Merrick approached with a limp. "We've counted 300 survivors," the captain said quietly. "Half the outposts gone, but the Dominion pulled out. Completely." Rains didn't answer. He was still listening, to the faint static on his comms, to the distant hum of rebuilding machines, to the heartbeat of a world refusing to die. Karak approached slowly, each step shaking dust from the ground. His armor plates were cracked, but his eyes glowed steady, bright amber. When he stopped beside Rains, the human turned toward him with a tired smile. You made it. The beast rumbled a low laugh. So did you. Against the odds. Against all logic, Rains said. Which, for humans, is pretty standard. Karak tilted his head. The Dominion will come again. Maybe, Rains said. But next time, they won't find the same galaxy. He nodded toward the horizon, where a convoy of ships, battered civilian freighters, and old Terran carriers was descending through the clouds. Merrick got the signal out. Every rebel frequency, every free system, every pirate and smuggler who hates the Dominion saw what we did. They're coming. Karak looked up, awe flickering behind the gold of his eyes. You did this with words. With trust, Rains chuckled. That's the thing about humans. We fight, sure, but it's what comes after the fighting that matters. Later that night, the survivors gathered around makeshift fires in the ruins of the outpost. The stars were bright, brighter than anyone remembered. Karak sat apart at first, uncertain, watching humans and aliens share food and laughter. For so long, his kind had been beasts, weapons. The idea of peace felt strange. Then a small human child, dirt-smudged, wide-eyed, walked up to him holding a piece of bread. She offered it silently. Karak looked to Rains, uncertain. The human nodded. The beast accepted the bread carefully between claws that could crush stone, and the child smiled. Something inside him shifted, quiet and profound. For the first time since his creation, he felt seen. In the days that followed, Rains helped rebuild. He trained mechanics to salvage Dominion tech. Merrick organized patrols. Messages poured in from distant systems. Colonies declaring independence, soldiers deserting, entire fleets turning their guns away. The spark had become a flame. On the 10th day, a transmission came through. A face Rains recognized. Tarvin, the Korthan medic who had first summoned him to the hangar. Human, the insectoid said, voice trembling with emotion. The story of the beast and the human spreads. Even within the Dominion, some question the old ways. You may have started something you cannot stop. Rains smiled faintly. That's the idea. Karak loomed behind him, his deep voice carrying through the channel. Tell them, no creature is born a weapon. We all choose what we fight for. Tarvin bowed his head. I will. The line cut, leaving only the wind outside. A week later, Rains and Karak stood beside the rebuilt transmitter tower, the same one that had broadcast their defiance to the stars. You sure about this? Merrick asked. You could stay. Lead the resistance here. Rains shook his head. I've done my part. Now it's time to take the fight to the ones who still think they own life itself. Karak rumbled agreement. Where you go, I go. Merrick looked between them and smirked. You two are insane. Maybe, Rains said, climbing into the shuttle. But it's the kind of crazy that changes the galaxy. The engines roared to life. Dust swirled as the ship rose into the air, climbing toward the stratosphere. Below, the survivors waved. Above, the stars waited, silent witnesses to what two unlikely allies had started. Inside the cockpit, Karak settled into the co-pilot's seat, still awkward in the human-sized harness. You never told me, he said. Why did you risk yourself for me? That first day, Rains glanced at him, half smiling. Because someone once told me a soldier's job isn't to kill what's dangerous. It's to protect what's worth saving. Karak considered that, eyes narrowing in thought. Then he looked out the window. And you decided I was worth saving? Rains met his gaze. You never needed to earn it. For a long time. They flew in silence, man and beast, side by side, heading toward the unknown dot far behind them, across thousands of systems. Whispers spread like wildfire. They called it the Whisper of Korthus, story of a human who saw a weapon and instead found a soul. Of a beast who learned to trust. Of a single act of compassion that cracked an empire. And in the dark halls of the Dominion, fear took root because they realized something terrible. You can crush armies. You can erase cities. Asterisk, but you can't kill an idea once a human whispers it. Epilogue easy. Buddy, years later, on a distant frontier moon, children played under banners that bore two symbols, the human hand and the beast's claw. Intertwined, a memorial stood nearby, simple and unadorned. It read, "No alien dared treat the beast," until the human whispered, "I've got you." And the galaxy listened. Asterisk,